And hello, everyone. I'm David Guzman. Welcome inside the NBC4i Digital Center for the Ryan Day press conference edition of NBC4 Sports Extra. There is a look at the podium inside the Woody Hayes Athletic Center as we await for Ryan Day to talk about the penultimate game of the regular season. Ohio State getting set to take on Rutgers. It's also the final game at home in the regular season for the Buckeyes. Then, of course, we have the game coming up, but we'll get there when we get there. Ohio State coming in with the nation's longest active winning streak, 14 games. It comes after a win over UCLA, a pretty big win over UCLA. So now it's Rutgers that is on tap. Ohio State leading the series 10-0. They've met 10 times. And Ohio State has won each and every one of them. Ohio State's defense continuing to lead the way. Top 5 defense in no less than 14 different categories. Best scoring defense in the country, averaging 7.5 points a game. Best total defense in the country, only allowing an average of 212.6 yards a game. Best pass, number 2 in passing defense, number 2 in rushing defense as well. Speaking of rushing, on the offensive side of the ball, we finally saw a big day on the ground from Ohio State in that win over UCLA. 3 different running backs averaging at least 7 yards a carry. Bo Jackson leading the way with 112 yards. Isaiah West, James Peoples also having big days on the ground. James Peoples, by the way, with 2 touchdowns against the Bruins. 222 yards total on the ground for Ohio State against the Buckeyes. These two teams started playing each other back in 2014. Ohio State getting ready to host Rutgers in the final home game of the regular season. If you are just joining us, we are awaiting Ryan Day to get to the podium at the Woody Hayes Athletic Center to talk about the upcoming matchup against the Scarlet Knights. There are a lot of different ties to the state of New Jersey. Ohio State with 6 players on its roster from the state of New Jersey, probably none bigger than the name of Davison Igbinosun, the cornerback. He's been a star in the secondary since he transferred from Ole Miss. 39 starts. He's defended 24 passes and has had 2 interceptions. A couple of other names from the Garden State, Jalen McClain, Tywon Malone, DZ Jones, and Quincy Porter, and Deshaun Stewart. Those are all Buckeyes who hail from the Garden State of New Jersey. Ohio State coming off its 10th win of the year, and Ohio State no stranger to having 10-win seasons. In fact, they have had 10-win seasons 13 straight years, not including the 2020 COVID year. Meanwhile, Rutgers 5-5 going into this matchup, including a 2-5 Big Ten record as they get ready for this noon game on Saturday at Ohio Stadium. Once again, we are awaiting Ryan Day to get to the podium. I see a little bit of camera movement, and that usually is a good sign. That means the head coach is on his way. Either that or our photographer is adjusting the shot as we speak. Try to listen in on the feed coming in from the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. Yeah, 14-game winning streak, best in the country, dating back to the college football playoff from last year. Again, this is the penultimate game of the regular season. Then, of course, it is the game taking on the team up north at the team up north the following week. Of course, that is Thanksgiving week. Ryan Day is the first Ohio State coach to start a season 10-0 4 different times. He's done it this year. He did it last year. He did it the year before that. He also did it in 2019. That is pretty amazing in terms of consistency. So we're expecting Ryan Day to talk about all sorts of things. Always interesting, the game before the game, especially considering who the opponent is. Rutgers, obviously, is the underdog going into this one. So we expect a lot more of more trends and big picture questions. Of course, we never really know with the media that covers Ohio State. But We expect some questions about the running game. We also expect some more questions about the health status of Carnell Tate and Jeremiah Smith. Tate missing a game for the second week in a row, held out due to precautionary reasons, and Jeremiah Smith was limited in the game against UCLA. Even though he was limited, though, Jeremiah Smith, number 4, pretty impressive once again. Smith played less than half of the game against UCLA, but he had that spectacular one-handed catch on the sidelines. He also caught 4 passes, so now he has 69 receptions for 902 yards and 10 touchdowns. All right, let's take you over to the Woody Hayes Athletic Center. We have Ryan Day at the podium.
All right, folks, thanks for coming. Starting the first row, Dave Biddle, lead us off.
Ryan, how are Jeremiah and Carnell feeling, and do you expect that they'll play this week?
Yeah, our policy is that we don't discuss specifics on injuries, and then once you start going down a little bit here, a little bit there, you can create a problem. And so for a number of reasons, we don't discuss those things. We put out the report the day of the game, but I can tell you that, they're in great spirits. The medical staff is working hard. We'll take it day to day and see how they come in each day, but they're working hard to get back on the field. And just so you understand, we check in every day. We take the advice of the medical staff and use their feedback, and we go from there. So we'll continue to do that.
Real quick on David, right tackle or right guard. How did he grade out? He played a lot of snaps.
Yeah.
Van Sickle, how did he play?
Solid. That was his first kind of real action, and I thought there was good snaps there. And you can see the talent, you can see the bend, you can see the power. He looks like he belongs. So now he's got to start stacking some games here.
Second row on the aisle, Jeremy Burton.
Well, I didn't raise my hand. Brian, when you are dealing with Saturday night, Julian was a little bit limpy, gimpy, looked like at times. I don't know if he got hit weird or whatever. How much does that potentially impact what he looked like on the field in the second half, like some of the accuracy, the sideline stuff? I mean, obviously quarterbacks throw the ball differently than they used to. You don't use your plant foot and your back foot all the same that we used to see when you were playing, but how much impact does that have in a game for you?
I guess it can just depend on what's going on, on each individual play. So I think it's hard to say exactly how much anything like that had an effect on him, but yeah, I mean, when you look at certain plays, there's a lot that goes into it. And so I can't specifically say, what percentage or anything like that, when you start to look at, we had maybe some guys in the game that hadn't had as many reps, there's not as much chemistry there. They'll work, hard to continue to build on that. There's a lot of things that come into play. So, but at the end of the day, we got to do our job.
Second row middle,
Ryan, you mentioned Jeremiah had a nagging thing, and he took that nasty hit against Illinois where he kind of got flipped over. Is there anything lingering from that particular play that's been bothering him?
Not that I know of. No.
And did he do anything in that game on Saturday to further complicate or injure what made him initially a game time decision?
Not that I know of. No.
we'll stay in the second row, Stephen Means.
Back in the spring, you and a lot of the players were talking about how they wanted to take some of the signs and everything down and just kind of wanted to move on from last year and those successes and kind of carve their own path here and get their own in those situations. I know that's about the positives of last season and whatnot, but I don't know, philosophically, can that apply to some of the negatives of the last couple of years of these guys they don't have the successes, but they also don't have necessarily the war wounds that a lot of those guys had over the last couple of years?
I don't know. I just know that we have to continue to focus on right now, and that's it. And there's lessons that can be learned from the past, but at the end of the day, it comes down to everybody doing their job and just staying focused right now. And that's it. And I think it's a job as the coaches to be at our best. It's a job of the players to be at their best right now. And we'll use, what's happened in the past as learning lessons. But at the end of the day, the majority of that stuff doesn't have an effect on this team in particular. Everyone, and this team is unique. We have our own journey, our own process that we're looking to master every week. And that's really what it comes down to. So, this is their story. And, I say it all the time, the pen's in your hand, and here we are. We're in it right now. What do you want the story to be? Each team and each year, there's its own story. So, I think, again, we learn from the past, but ultimately we have to focus on what's right now.
with Carnell, at the Purdue game, you had mentioned you thought maybe he probably could have played if you needed to. Has there been a setback or anything since then that has changed the calculus with him at least?
Again, I don't want to get into everything because once I start answering one question, then it leads to something else. So I don't want to comment any of that stuff.
Over here, Dr. Barrett.
Coach, you said you want to be playing your best ball here in November. Just thoughts on this week's game, and it'll be senior day.
Yeah. Well, for our seniors, these games go fast, and we talk every year about how quickly these games go. And here we are, last game in the shoe, in the regular season, and it's important for everyone to play with urgency. But I say all the time, don't wait till the last game to start feeling all the emotion of that. Like that's a build up all year long, and being in the moment and appreciating that. But for the guys who are playing their last game in the shoe, it's a big deal, and we need to celebrate those guys by everybody in the Woody giving everything we have and playing for them. And I know they're going to put everything they have into this game because there's a lot of great memories on that field, a lot of great memories in the Woody, and spending time on the practice field and all of those things. And when you get a chance to reflect, it just makes you realize how important finishing this season is the right way.
How about Rutgers? Just obviously there's some familiarity too with Sean.
Yeah, sure. So, they always put pressure on you in all three phases. It starts with special teams and then goes to offense and defense. And, they always have a plan of how they want to attack you. And they play complementary football. So, coming off of a win and a bye week, so we got to be on our game.
Ryan, your defense is forcing so many 3-and-outs and short possessions, the last 2 weeks especially, that they're barely on the field. I think 37, 44 snaps. That's not leaving a ton for the starters or the backups. Are you having to change, or are you changing anything with practice to try and get them more reps? Are they playing too good right now?
No, they're not. But I think it's good in terms of the freshness of our team, so that part's been good. And we practiced physically. The offense has been on the field for more the last couple of weeks. I think we've had over 70 rushes the last 2 weeks, and so it's been good. It's been solid. Guys are getting those reps, but that's why we practice so hard during the week. But once you get to this part of the season, we got to be smart in what we do and make sure guys are fresh. And when you look at the snap count on defense, you can see why our guys are, seeking contact this time of year.
Cameron T. Robinson.
Ron, we see what Matt kind of does from a schematic thing on the schematic aspect on the field, but just to see him in the day-to-day, I know you don't work so much with the defense now because he's kind of running it, but see him on the day-to-day and how he's been with the players. What has that been like to see that growth over the years? Well,
it started right from when we walked in the building, and he continues to put that time and effort in and makes extra time to connect with the players and communicate with the staff. And because of that, there's trust. And I think when you come in as a new coordinator with, really the team in place, the coaching staff in place, I mean, you're kind of on your own. He brought in, a couple guys, but for the most part, he came in by himself, and he was able to connect with everybody early on. And that's how you have an impact early, is you build trust. And there's only one way to do that. That's spend time with your guys, and he's done that. And so I think, we've seen preparation. You've seen some confidence on the field. You've seen guys when, again, there hasn't been a whole lot of adversity this year, but when it has hit, there's been guys who get to the sideline, solve the problem, and get it fixed quickly, get back on the field without panic. I think that's because, they know when they turn to him and they turn to the coaching staff, they're going to give them answers on what exactly happened, and then go get it fixed.
Not to say there wasn't that same trust in the field last year, but that's a different vibe or feel with Patricia and this group as maybe last year.
Every year is different. Yeah, just the personality is different. We lost a whole lot of personalities on defense last year, and a whole lot of production, and a whole new group of guys came in. And so, because there was just so much movement between, the players, the coordinator, it was just a totally different feel and dynamic, but all within the culture of our program. And so, again, I don't know how to compare it other than it's just different.
Over here now, okay.
When you look at James Peoples, he came into this year kind of high expectations. Obviously, things didn't go the way he wanted out of the gate. What have those conversations been like? And then to see him have that moment Saturday and kind of really start to take off here, how special is that?
Well, I think this is another one of our younger running backs that hasn't, reached his potential yet. And I think you're seeing his work ethic and his mindset really change as the season's gone on. Maybe not change, but just really develop, in my opinion. You can see it when he's on the field. You can see the way he's practicing, and that's kind of where it starts. No, it doesn't start there. It starts with a mindset. Then it starts with how you practice, and then all of a sudden shows up in the game. And now you're starting to see him really run downhill. You're seeing him break tackles, and now he's starting to really, show what he can do. And I still think there's a lot left for James. But to your point, he stayed with it. He hasn't let anything get in the way and discourage him, which is great. And because of that, now he's starting to play his best football when we need him the most.
Right behind him, Dave Holt.
Yeah, you talk about senior day. It's also, for being honest, junior day for a few of you guys probably who are going to be back, top 10 projected picks. Do you have conversations with them? I mean, kind of this unstated thing that this might be it for you too, even though we're not talking about that quite yet.
We have meetings during bye weeks and communicate with guys and, their sphere of influence, and try to help them the best they can to prepare them so it doesn't all just come at them at the end of the year. So they can stay focused on what matters most, and that's what's playing. But right now it's all about football.
Third row on the aisle, Dylan Davis.
I'm not sure what Josh Medea's health status is this week, but given what you said about Gabe and what he showed you, is it possible you would play 3 guards there and try to rotate 3 guys in there if they're all 3 capable of playing, or do you really want to keep that to 2? I don't know what that looks like.
Right. We probably want to keep it to 2, but I guess if the snap count got really high, we could do that, but we probably want to keep it to 2 guys.
We'll go over to the left to Joe Nugent.
What is it about Rutgers' ability to block punts? We've seen it. They had multiple punts in games before.
Yeah.
And how much of a concern is it when you come into a game like this?
Well, they put a ton of pressure on you, and and that's felt by everybody. I think when you look at even last week when we put some pressure at the end of the half, the punter, I could obviously feel that and didn't maybe kick it exactly how he wanted, which led to, I think, the fact that the ball was blocked, the punt was blocked. So I think it's a mindset that they're going to apply pressure, and that's their philosophy. Everyone has their own philosophy, and they do a great job of it, man. Those guys give great effort, and so we got to be on our game.
Fourth row in the middle, Tony Kirk.
Ryan, regarding recruiting, in his last few years, Urban Meyer would lament the fact that just wasn't enough senior film. They didn't get to evaluate enough senior film. Now with NIL, the coaching carousel, we've seen you guys pick up 7 seniors this month. How has all of everything going on impacted your ability to evaluate seniors now?
Well, that was our philosophy coming into the season, was that for a lot of reasons we wanted to be able to identify the guys who really played well their senior year, and then use that as an evaluation tool, maybe even more than we had in the past. And one of the biggest reasons is because these are truly investments now, and in terms of resources, and we have to make sure that we're right in what we're doing. These decisions are more and more important. So, the more information you have, certainly it helps make every decision clearer, and that's what we're looking to do. So, as many times as we can evaluate a recruit, and figure out if this is somebody who's going to work here, because it's not about winning signing day. It's about them coming here and having success. If they have success, we have success. If they fail, we fail. And so this is a relationship that has to be on both ends. And we also want to make sure that there's guys that fit our culture and want to be here. So all those things come into play when you're looking to sustain a certain level over a period of time.
Do you think you've been helped by the fluidity of the sport right now?
I mean, I think it's just the way that it is in terms of, like you said, the NIL, obviously there's been coaching changes, and, we're trying to adapt every year and do what's best for that year. It's like, you have to look at it, from a wider lens, but then every once in a while you got to look and see, okay, here are the changes that are going on. Now there's one transfer portal. All those things are taken into consideration. You look at, how, some of the guys are playing. Are there guys who are going to go to the NFL and leave early now? Maybe we didn't know if they were going to before the season. So we try to adapt the best we can, and then predict the best we can and forecast what it's going to look like. And that's what roster management's all about right now. So I know stability is, more important than ever right now, and we have to make sure we're doing our part to bring in the right people.
Second row in the front, step up.
You talked earlier about this team being really focused on right now, and you've talked about routine kind of throughout the year, about not being bored with the same thing and hearing the same thing, doing the same thing. Has this team handled that better than maybe some you've seen in the past, and how much does it help whether it's this week about not overlooking an opponent or week one when there was a massive opponent, not thinking too much of that opponent? Like, how much has routine helped this team, and have they handled that better than some of the past?
I don't know how to compare them to previous teams, but they're very businesslike. Good look in their eye when they come in the building. Good look in their eye on the sideline before the game, when they're in the game. I think they know how serious this is and our obligation to do our job. And I think it's all about the process and doing a great job from Sunday all the way to Saturday. And if we can focus on that part of it and not the result, not the opponent, then we'll have a chance to continue to build. Because if you keep getting better at your process and then you keep using the game as feedback, when you get to the end of the season, you're going to do the same thing that week. That's it. We're not going to change. And so we're trying to master that the best we can here and stay focused and stay locked in. And that's it. Like, all the other stuff doesn't matter. It's about, like, how do I focus on doing my job and doing my part as on the team, and keeping all the distractions out of the way, because we know they're out there, and we can't be naive to that. So, but it's one thing to say, it's another thing for guys to listen and buy in, and right now they are, but it's week to week, as you know.
Ryan, we were talking to Kiata a few weeks ago about, he said that he had meetings with you and Matt about being able to not just cage the pocket as much, and we've seen him kind of take off in his production. Obviously, everybody knows about the player meetings from last year in December. How much better have you and your staff gotten over the last 12 months on player feedback? And do you feel like that's something that has really helped this program forward as you've matured with the team?
Well, I mean, I feel like communication, and just like any type of relationship, any type of organization, everybody will tell you communication's very important. But sometimes coaches are the most uncoachable people. Somebody that I know back home told me that, and they're right. So, we have to be able to listen. And we don't always have to agree, but we have to create an environment where someone feels like they can speak freely and give you their feedback. And if there's high levels of trust, then there can be those types of conversations. And so knowing what's going on in the minds of our players is critical. And then having ownership, knowing that they're being heard, I think does make a difference. They understand the hierarchy. They know how it works. But, it's also good to be heard and challenged. And, as a coach, it's okay to concede a point. And I think you can't let your ego get in the way. You got to do what's best for the organization.
Yeah, Ryan, without delving into specifics, just sort of for the record, can you walk us through injury protocol, like how that plays out either in a game or during the week?
In terms of a game?
Or during the week, like, does the athlete have the final say? I know that you work with the trainer in a game and then during the week.
In terms of, like, as we get closer to the game, if someone's available or not. Yeah, so the medical staff each day gives a report on how someone's doing, whether they're in practice, full go, limited or out, and then, kind of gives an update on how things are going. And then as we get closer to the game, it's available, unavailable, or questionable, game time decision. And so, we just go off of that. And certainly the communication between, the players and the medical staff is important in terms of making those decisions.
If the player didn't want to, if he just felt he couldn't play, he has the final say?
Oh, of course. Yeah. Of course. Yeah. Yeah. Everyone's feedback is taken into consideration. And that's where, again, when you talk about trust within an organization, all those things come into play, and it's a group effort. But certainly we always take into consideration, the student athletes and how they're feeling and all those things. Yeah.
Aside, we're in a new era. You've talked about it. More games. Do you ever foresee the day where load management really becomes a thing where a guy, you just don't play a guy in a game? Or I know you rep them, fewer reps, but how do you see this playing out?
I think a part of it is like the season, and then a part of it would be how you practice during the week, and then, where somebody is within their season. And so we get a lot of good information from sports science compared to previous years and try to do the best we can. But we also have to win, every game. And so that's the balance. But I feel like, here, when you look at last year, when you look at how we've handled things, I think we're in a pretty good place. But we're always chasing it and trying to do what's best for our guys.
Ryan, obviously you guys don't have quite as big of a senior class in terms of guys who have been here for 4 years this year, but how important have guys like Sonny, like Kate, Kenyatta, Carson, guys who have been there the full 4 years been in terms of leadership for this team?
Yeah, I think it's interesting because when you look at last year's team and how many guys came back, you kind of recognize that once they walked out, we were going to have sort of a gap in there. That's just kind of how it works. When someone decides to come back for their 4th and 5th year, sometimes there's no room for some players, and so they decide maybe to move on or whatever it might be. So we knew there was going to kind of be a year where we didn't have as many older seniors. But I think the leadership of even the juniors and even some sophomores has been excellent because they've been kind of thrust into those roles, as you've seen. And so, it isn't just about, your ranking that gives you leadership. It's about your impact and influence on others. And I think, you're seeing some really great leadership. When guys speak, the guys around them listen. And I think there's just a matter of fact about this group. There's not a lot of drama. They know what they need to do. They show up and they make guys around them better. And that approach so far has worked. We've got to keep it going.
We're throwing the middle, Patrick Murphy.
Brian, similar to what Rob was asking, but when you have a guy who maybe could play, but you think, okay, maybe this isn't the best for the long-term goals like we've talked about, they're competitors, they want to be on the field. How does that side of the conversation go when maybe you guys are saying this isn't probably the best idea and the player wants to be out there? Just take us through that.
Yeah, every situation's different, but at the end of the day, it's our job to make sure that we're, one, giving great information, and then two, looking out for what's best for our guys. And that's really, the best I can say it. But there's always a lot of variables and a lot that goes into every situation. And so we try to do the best we can, again, to communicate and do what's best for our guys.
Second row in the middle, Doug Race.
Ryan, you're talking about what the medical staff does during the week with guys are limited or whatever. At this point in the year, I'm sure there's a bunch of guys who have physical issues. It's a violent sport. How much do guys need practice during the week in order to play on Saturday? Can you be pretty limited during the week, especially if you're a veteran, and be okay on Saturday to play?
Yep. Yeah, I think it depends on what soreness guys have or what injuries maybe they are, and what position. I think all those things come into consideration. And like you said, on a day like today, we're going to have good on good. We're going to have scout periods. We're going to have indie periods. And so based on what they're dealing with, we'll adapt we've done that for years. We adapt that practice based on how they're doing. Full go is full go. Then you have limited. And then you have, just indie. And so based on what they're dealing with, let's just say it's a shoulder, they're not going to be involved in the special teams drills or snagging guys to the ground or, whatever the drills might be. So, the medical staff does a great job of making sure they present that to us at our 9 o'clock meetings every morning so that we can plan ahead for practice.
Front row, Bill Rabinowitz.
Since the Texas game, you've won every game by at least 18 points. This is a great problem to have, to not have close calls, but every other team in the country has. Is there a part of you that wishes that you had faced that kind of adversity? And I have a hunch how you're going to answer this, but what are you doing to try to simulate that so that when you do get in those games, you're ready?
I mean, I hear what you're saying, but it's like trying to worry about things that are out of your control, and it's sort of a waste of time. However, I think I mentioned to you that, we were trying to, raise the level of play in terms of a 83% grade, which is hard to do. And just so everybody understands, even that 3% can be a big deal. It could come down to one play in a matchup game. And so, the intensity is high. It's the coach's job to make sure everybody in the building is locked in. It's my job to make sure the coaches are locked in. And it's the position coach's job to make sure that their units are locked in and doing their job, and we're on our game. And then practice has got to be good too. I mean, we can't just expect to not be physical in practice and not go good on good, because we're going to need that to keep our edge. And so all those things are taken into consideration, but we don't take anything for granted. We don't take we don't make any assumptions, man. Every week, every Saturday, an opportunity to get to Indianapolis is on the line. That's the way it is here right now. I mean, we want to get to Indy, and we haven't got to Indy here. There's nobody on this team that's been to Indy right now, and they know it. And so, that's the edge. Wake up in the morning every day looking to reach our goals. So whoever we play, we play. This is going to be a great challenge this week. We know that, and we just watch across college football every week, and you just see, different teams, challenging each other, and we got to do our part. So we can't worry about what we can't control. And you've heard me say that before. I know it sounds boring, but it's the truth. We got to worry about what we can control.
You've talked about the edginess of the team. Do you think that will serve you well when you get into that situation, and that's a reason you're not so worried about this?
I'm worried about everything. That's just the way I am. It's a coach's life. He just he's always trying to figure out what's next and try to predict and forecast the best you can. And but I love our guys. I love the edginess. I love the competitiveness. And here we are. I mean, you look at that schedule right there. We only got 2 more in that schedule. And so if you said we're 10-0, rocking right now, I'd say let's go play. And so we're here. And so we got to be at our best. Everybody in the building.
Got time for 2 more. We'll go to Jeff Gilbert.
Coach, you worry about everything, as you just said.
Yeah.
Running game is seeing improvement. When you watch the film this week, I know it's not 100% what you want, but how did you feel about the running game after watching this game versus previous weeks?
I mean, I thought there was a lot of physicality. I see Carson Hinsman had 9 knockdowns in the game. I mean, it's hard to knock a trash can down 9 times. That's a heck of a job. I thought guys were finishing downfield. There's some clips of guys finishing people out of bounds. Running backs are running through contact. People are finishing. It was a good Sunday to watch effort and physicality and fundamentals, because we know that's going to matter in the end.
83%?
Yeah, there was some 83% for sure. Again, I don't want to get into it all, but yeah. And some of those guys are in the O-line, which, there's nowhere to hide in the offensive line unless maybe there's a naked or a quick screen or something like that. But other than that, you're graded to a high level. And Coach Bowen is very particular and critiques those guys at a high level. And so there were some guys who graded out, which is not easy to do. So credit to them in their preparation, and now we got to do it again.
Just shifting gears back to high school, in the state of Ohio, they're voting to possibly bring NIL to high school football. Just your thoughts on how that could impact the sport for high school and college, bring NIL down there? Yeah, well, I think when you look at where the rest of the nation is, I think, we'll let the people who make the decisions make the decisions. But I think across the country, you're seeing it's become pretty standard. And so I think if we would have said this about 10 years ago, I think all of us would have been like, no way. But here we are. We're in this phase, and I can see it obviously benefiting the student athletes, which ultimately is a great opportunity for them.
Last question is Tim May.
Oh, thanks, Mike. I'm just zeroing in on one. After the game Saturday night, Brandon Ennis said he's seen a look in your eye after, last year after the meeting and stuff that got everything straight, but that look is still there. When you look in the mirror right now, what do you see staring back at you from the standpoint of what just has changed about your demeanor that's carrying through?
Oh, I don't know. Yeah, I don't know. It's every year, every game, you learn, you try to grow, you try to get better, you try to recognize the things that need to get done to do your job. We all have an obligation, and yeah, I mean, just surround yourself with great people and go as hard as you possibly can and push, and that's it. And so, no, I mean, I can't sit here, I tell you I know any different how I act or anything like that based on week to week. I try to be as consistent as I can. And try to push the guys and try to give them as much information as I can on what's coming next and forecast what that week needs to look like and where we're going with the season, and try to put the guys in the best position to be successful. That's it. And I think the one thing that these guys can recognize is that there's a lot of buy-in. They know that, if you buy into what we're doing, if you believe in what you're doing, you're going to see the results. And that's important. And I think everybody in the building feels that way when they walk into Woody. And that's a good sign for a leader. But again, like it's week to week, and we got to keep bringing it.
When you eyeball guys before a game, like you said, you look into their eyes, you see that. What's the telltale sign there?
Well, I think eyes lead to the soul, man. You look at someone's eyes, you know exactly what's going on. And that mindset starts with how you look. And someone told me that, and I agree with it. And so you can tell exactly, what you're dealing with when you look somebody in the eye. And, I watch a sideline, I watch the TV copies, I watch everything just to see what the look in everybody's eye is. And I think when you look at our guys, there's a certain business about them, and that's the way we're going to play the game.
Coach, thank you.
Thanks, guys.
Thanks, Ryan.
All right, that was Ryan Day after about half an hour at the podium discussing the preparations for Ohio State's final home game of the regular season against Rutgers. Interesting answers to some questions regarding injuries. He was asked about Jeremiah Smith and Carnell Tate and the status of their health, and Ryan Day declining to really comment specifically on their injuries, saying their policy is to not discuss injuries, but he did say that both players are in great spirits, the medical staff working hard to get them back on the field this weekend. It's an interesting answer because it suggests a couple of things. I don't want to speculate, but basically Jeremiah Smith, Carnell Tate still probably questionable at the very least for this weekend's game against Rutgers. It's something that, of course, we'll continue to talk about throughout the week on NBC4 and, of course, right here on NBC4 Sports Extra. Before we go, let's take a quick look, if we can, at the Big Ten schedule for this week. Because it's always a busy week in the Big Ten, and we heard Ryan Day talk about his desire for Ohio State to get to Indianapolis and play in the Big Ten championship game, pointing out that no one on the roster has ever played in Indy for the Big Ten championship. So speaking of the Big Ten, taking a look at the top games for this week, other than, of course, the Rutgers-Ohio State game happening at noon. We've got Michigan State visiting Iowa. Michigan State coming off a loss to Penn State. USC at Oregon, that is going to be one to watch for. That kicks off at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, 12:30 on the West Coast. The team up north taking on Maryland in the Wolverines' final game before the game next week. That's going to be a 4 o'clock kick. Penn State looking to go back-to-back wins. Hosting Nebraska, and Illinois taking on Wisconsin. That game is set for 7:30, and that is a game you can watch on NBC4. All right, so that'll do it for this edition of NBC4 Sports Extra, the Ryan Day press conference edition. Of course, we'll have much more to talk about. We'll have our weekly roundtable segment coming up on Wednesday night, and of course, a preview of the matchup between the Buckeyes and the Scarlet Knights. That's coming up on Thursday here on the NBC4 streaming channel on NBC4 Sports Extra. All right, until then, I'm David de Guzman. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thanks for watching. For more NBC4, download the NBC4 streaming app. You'll get free 24/7 local programming streamed straight to your living room. Just search NBC4 Columbus on your Apple TV, Amazon Fire, Roku, or Samsung device.